So I'm glad that the Secretary Tourism has accommodated me. Though I believe the loss would be mine because I was very keenly listening to what the panelists were saying, and they are all experts in their own field. I also have to congratulate from the bottom of my heart for this beautiful compilation, The Travel for Life. I think it's also very much in keeping with the concept the Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi has given us. And the acronym Life for Environment is now being universally hailed. And also I think it reiterates India's resolve of a pro-planet approach, and very much in keeping with the logo of the G20. So when somebody asks you outside in the media, what is the difference between the other G20s and the Srinagar G20, they've been asking you since yesterday morning, because they expect you to then that there will be no untoward incident, etc., etc. You can also tell them that the booklet personifying the logo has been released at G20 Srinagar, because Vasudev Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future, in fact also symbolizes our value for life in all its forms, whether the human life, the animal life, plant life, microorganism, and this is precisely what is found on this road. Now, having said that, I was listening to the experts, and I believe to an extent agreeing with what Dr. Pava was saying, not entirely, because that would not include him also. I think the subject is too serious to be left only to the wildlife experts. So, at the risk of annoying some of the panelists, but I think maybe that is the advantage that I have of being an outsider to this domain of experts. When we talk of eco-tourism, first let's ask ourselves, why do we have to talk about it? If it is so natural, then why doesn't it come naturally to us? The point is that in India, in our traditional and also as a part of legacy, it was never a part of our culture in a manner it might have been in some other countries of the world. Also because eco-tourism was to an extent a luxury of the developed world. I couldn't have a safari and go around and do all those kind of things, which maybe some others could have been doing. So in a country where we were struggling for a two-time meal and leave aside wildlife, we're trying to preserve our own life, this was a far-fetched dream. But then we have evolved. We have evolved over the last 75 years. So 75 years is a very small time span in the age of a nation, because the history of nations is written in centuries. 75 years does not even occupy the footnote of a chapter. But still we have evolved. Immediately after independence we were struggling with this, with hunger, with the scarcity of food stocks, etc., etc. So the priorities were different at all levels, even at the level of the private sector or the public sector and all the other potential stakeholders. Gradually, when we have been able to take care of the other areas to an extent, we are now also opening our eyes and trying to plan our vision in this sector. Also because we took very long, in fact, and sometimes I think thanks to Prime Minister Modi, we have had a quantum jump in 9 years. But we took 70 years to get out of some of the colonial hangovers. So what was being said by Dr. Pava, I think one part is that we still were also commanded by a lot of regulations. And as you were saying in the context of the wildlife, it happened in every area. Because we didn't realize, even at the midnight of independence, when we said that, okay, now ICS has turned IAS, but it was only half truth. In fact, the change had happened at the stroke of midnight recession. The collector of the British Times was no longer a collector, he was the district development commissioner. He was supposed to collect revenue for the empire and impose the writ of the empire. Now my district head was supposed to collect revenue for a welfare state and be a messenger between the masses and the government. But we treated him with the same privilege. I saw even here, I think, even Jammu and Kashmir, a lot of that hangover still persists compared to many other states I was witnessing over the last 2 days. So that gave rise to very slow process of deregulation. Do you know something? I mean, it sounds little kiddish saying so to an audience of forest experts. The Indian Forest Act was enacted by the British in 1919. 1919. No, 1919. I have the record. Because I got it amended exactly after 100 years and said in the parliament. 1919 and we carried on with the same act till 2019. It's only then we brought in an amendment and exempted homegrown bamboo. Because I put it across to the Honorable Prime Minister and also the other concerned. If we take our talk only of bamboo, because that's how the tourism will grow. It has to become a source of not only of your of food for eyes, but also food for tummy. So the tourism combined with your startup opportunities. We had abundant bamboo growing in our backyard, but it was forbidden. Because the Indian Forest Act, which was enacted by the Britishers for their own reasons, because for them we were subjects. They didn't think of us in the same sensitivity. And the irony was that we were, in every year in India we do a business of about 5,000 to 6,000 crore in agarbatti alone. So entire bamboo grown from here and agarbatti brought from China, Korea, Vietnam. Could there be a greater irony than this? And could there be a greater statement on our forest and forest regulations than this? Luckily, 4 years back we got rid of that. So what I'm trying to say is, all these things coupled together, because this is a cumulative effect, a multifactorial effect of the issues that we are facing in various other areas, including in this one. And therefore, I am glad that an initiative has been taken. I was very keenly listening to some of the policies rolled out. I hope they'll follow a timeline because we are already late. In the morning we were talking about the films, the film tourism. I believe, I hope somebody could have pointed to that. In our country there is not much of a culture to produce films on this theme. Neither on wildlife nor on children. We produce films only on young couples. And the story revolves around them. The mother, the father, the uncle, the mother-in-law, whatever. So the tragedy also ends there, the happiness also. As if there is no other age group living in this country. But this wildlife I am talking about, because the children films and the wildlife films have a correlation. So this is an area where also, because we are sitting in a audience which is dedicated to all these. Then the technology. Now the technology has evolved to such an extent that we could actually make use of it for propagation of our wildlife sanctuaries, wildlife reserves, also educating people about it. In the olden times you had one picture in 20 years, you would have a movie called Hatari, which came in early 1960s and is being still talked about almost 70 years later. Because then they also realized that there were not many takers. And in India, if you choose to prepare a movie on wildlife, you will get C-grade hero and everything. No Shah Rukh Khan will be ready to act in a wildlife movie. Or no Salman Khan. because we have not been able to give esteem. So I think the first and very most is to give esteem to this area, which is a part not only of our life, as has been rightly mentioned in the booklet released by the Honorable Tourism Minister, but it's also part of our overall ecosystem. And I'm also glad that in this initiative we are involving whole of government, which Honorable Minister has been talking about since yesterday. That is also one reason, because we were working in silos. We were preparing a rule which was being followed elsewhere. Now, for example, in the COVID times, I think that is one thing we could form ourselves, to do away with all the NOCs. And this government is very open. We have already done away with 2,000 rules. I'm also dealing with the Department of Solid Trading. And I was saying the other day, I said every government takes pride in saying, look here, in our time this happened, we brought in this law, we brought in this. Every minister, every officer after his term is over says, I said, we'll have the pride of saying, look here, we did away with 2,000. And they were so much loaded with the British colonialism. You'll be surprised that I tell you, one of the rules which we did away only about in the last session was that if your washroom is not properly washed or done up, the tenant can be sent to prison. They might have been a marriage, because this was 200 years ago, because there you didn't have sanitary conditions, so the foul stink would disturb the entire office environment. But it is no relevance now, and nobody is following it also. In the COVID times, one of my students wanted to set up a small clinic, a young medico. I was taken aback. He came to me with 66 NOCs. The boy was so intelligent, he had put up a small solar plant on the clinic. And in spite of that, he was asked by the Ministry of Power, because the environment, I'm glad you were mentioning the environment also should be involved and sensitized. The Ministry of Environment said that you get a clearance from Power Ministry. This boy was at pains to explain, sir, I precisely put in a solar plant because this does not require power clearance, it's a clean energy. But he said, नहीं, ये तो सूची में लिखा है, तो मैंने टिक मार्क करना है, बाकी आप जानो. And I'm saying so because I've neither been a very professional wildlife, neither been a professional politician. So we have seen things happening and also gone through these things, being at the receiving end. When Mr. Parikar became Chief Minister for the first time in Goa, since he also came from a technical background, he was very fond of me and my senior. So I asked him, sir, how does it feel like? He said, it is a strange dunya. Then to exemplify, he narrated an anecdote. Incidentally, that later on that became my department, and I brought in a lot of simplifications in that. It's part of our pensions. He said an elderly gentleman came to me and he said that my pension is stopped because I couldn't produce the life certificate, so I couldn't manage that. So he said, no, I felt it was not proper, so I helped him out. I asked somebody to assist him, got him the life certificate for the year ending, year 2022, 23 for that matter, 2021, 22, to enable him to get the salary. He went there, got it, must have. He says, to my surprise, he again came back after 15 days. So I said, भाई साहब आपका काम तो हो गया सर, कहता हो तो गया सर, पर थोड़ा रह गया. सर क्या हुआ? वो तो कैशियर है, वो कह रहा है कि 21-22 का तो लाइफ सर्टिफिकेट है, लेकिन 2021 का नहीं है, तो पिछले साल वाली मैं नहीं निकालूंगा. अब the point is, if we are not pragmatic enough to have the confidence to take decisions, I think this is something, because notwithstanding all the demerits of the colonial rule, these are some of the merits also we have to follow to be able to take decisions with integrity and on this spot. And I think these are some of the things, and this is what has happened when we work in silos. And I'm sure these new initiatives that are being rolled out will also follow certain timelines. And how to bring about awareness about all this. So I think we have a lot of social media tools. We have incidentally a crowd here which is also dealing with the information and films, we could make use of them to propagate what it is all about. Because otherwise, if you start blindly, preaching about wildlife to children, the first deterrent will come from the parents. वो कहेंगे साहब आप क्या था आज सब आज वाइल्ड लाइफ का लेक्चर किया करवाया, किसने किया? डॉक्टर पापा था। उन्हें कहा भाई बात सुन, वो तो हो गए रिटायर और तेरी ये 12वीं जमात तूने आगे अपीयर होना एंट्रेंस में, तू कोई पढ़ाई लिखाई का काम कर, ये छोड़ लेक्चर अटेंड। सो द फर्स्ट deterrent would come from this. That's why I always say when you have this, you have to have multi-age group awareness programs. All the children along with the parents, along with the teachers. So that the sensitization does not meet with desensitization from the unforeseen quarters. But I think the saving grace is that we are now having a milieu which is very encouraging. Prime Minister Modi is open to all the enabling measures, open to suggestions, and is also a great supporter of this PPP model that you were talking about. Otherwise, we would not have been able to open the doors of the space sector. For about 7 decades, you just read in the newspaper that there was some remote area called Srinagar, nobody knew where it was. Today we have 130 private startups working over there. And when we talk of Amrit Kal in the next 25 years, how are we going to add value to that? Unless each of the citizens is given an opportunity to contribute. And wildlife is going to be a huge, huge asset for us because many of our areas have remained unexplored. One of them is the Himalayas, where we are sitting now. Another 3-4 states also like in the belt of Himalayas, the Arunachal, Uttarakhand, Himachal. And the other is our oceans. We have 7,500 long kilometer coastal area, remain unexplored. I was telling the friends the other day from Australia, you have a continent, Australian continent, you have a country, you have an island, but your ocean is not known as Australian Ocean. My ocean known because my forefathers could see the wealth lying inside. And next 20, not even 25 years, if you are able to consider, we will be able to generate huge amount of wealth from these sources, wildlife resources, the Himalayan, the Roma, and the ocean resources to add value. Because what has happened is, unfortunately, when I was talking to the hangover, even when the startup concept came to India, we heard about it first time from the West and incidentally landed in Bangalore, which was an IT hub. So we got stuck. We thought startup means IT. It is not so. You could be a wildlife startup. You have agri startups in Kashmir Valley. You could be an ocean startup. So let's think of the startup avenues which are exclusively our domain, not available to other countries, because that is what is going to enrich our resources and enrich our future economy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed.